Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and for the last 20 years, it feels like, in a good way, we've been reviewing movies, current and classic, all with a lovable queer bear plus friends twist. And we're coming at you this week with not one, not two, not three, not four, but five movies. This is our movie catch up episode. Crazy what tends to happen at the end of the year. Movies stack up, they're coming out, ahead of the holidays, and we only have so much time to watch movies. Fuck. Oh, we got our explicit right away. So we tend to see a bunch of movies when we're shut down for a couple weeks over our holiday break, and then we catch up rapid fire with those. So this week, that's what we are going to be doing. We're going to be discussing Baby Girl, Nosferatu, Carry On, Sonic 3, and My Old Ass. Not my personal ass, because my ass isn't old. And even if it was, daddies are hot. That is the actual name of a movie, just FYI. Ask Aubrey
great
Plaza,
name.
she'll tell you all about it.
Yeah.
Let me introduce you to my fantastic co-hosts so we can bring them into the conversation, which always makes things more fun. Jim Pugliafico is here with us as usual in the virtual studio. Hey, sweetheart, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm here. I like this episode because this is the time of year we're scrambling to catch up in a couple weeks or a week. We're going to be doing a week, I guess. We're going to be doing our top movies of 2024. And, because of the studio's shitty release, strategies, a lot of movies pile up at the end of the year. And there's going to even be some we're not going to get to see that some people with screeners have seen, or some people have gone to certain festivals have seen, or live in certain cities have seen, but others not. But this is a chance to kind of take some of those films that have bunched up at the end of the year and give you at least our quick impressions, no spoilers, right? Of a handful of them. So I'm happy for that.
Indeed, very happy. The more movies we can talk about, the better it is sometimes, I think. So I can't wait to hear, Jim, your thoughts on some of these films. But there is another voice that the Movie Bears podcast would literally not be the same if we didn't have. William Lindis, welcome to the show. How are you, friend?
Well, my old ass has been watching a lot of movies lately, and I'm really excited for tonight's episode because we are, like you mentioned, counting down, not even counting down, but counting up 5 different films that we've seen as we catch up through the holidays. There's just been so much that we've been out there scrambling to watch, kind of squeezing in the cracks where we can. And gosh, 5 reviews back to back to back to back to back. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then with our next episode, as Jim sort of alluded to, we're going to be doing lots of movies as we count down our top 10 of the previous year. Holy crap, so many movies. So glad to be here with y'all. I'm ready to do this thing.
Me too. And speaking of next week is officially our top 10 movies of 2024. But quote, next week is relative to when we're recording. So if you're listening 8 years in the future, and I hope you are, obviously that date has long passed. We're recording that episode, as long as nothing goes sideways, on January 21st at 5:40 p.m. Pacific time. So I know a lot of folks have been writing in and asking when we're going to do that top films episode, including Sammy D, good friend of the show. He's all excited. I can't wait to hear his thoughts. And Will, we normally do a thing where we solicit some lists from our listeners.
Yes.
What do y'all think? Should we open that line again this year?
100%. 100%.
Whether it's 10 movies or 2 movies that you love this year, I love that part of that annual show.
What I would expect our listeners to do is take a look over the next few days relative of when they're hearing this go live on our social media feed. And primarily we do a lot of our posting through Facebook, so keep an eye out there. And once you see that post that says, hey, give us your top 10, add into the comments what your top 10 are, shoot us a message. The important thing is share your picks, because what we like to do is read those live on the air. Our picks are good. Y'all's picks are better. And we want to share all of these picks together so that hopefully anyone listening now, or like Brad mentioned, 8 years from now, can get a monster list of films they got to watch. So keep an eye out for that post and share your thoughts with us.
All right. Excellent. Well, we have so much to discuss on this episode with 5 different movies. We'll say this up front before we go ahead and make the jump into the first one. We're going to be talking about all 5 films completely spoiler free. And that's because this is kind of like a big extended butt plugs section in a way. We wanted to talk about these movies and maybe put them on your radar potentially, or maybe keep them off your radar if for some reason you value our opinion. That's totally your call there, but we're going to talk through them and see what thoughts we have. Unlike other podcasts, I won't say names. Spoiler free on our show fucking means spoiler free. So feel free to continue listening. Hang out with us if you haven't seen these films. We might read an IMDb summary and share some initial thoughts, but we'll keep the plot details to ourselves.
Hey,
Except
Brad,
for that, really, yeah.
When are we going to get you drunk enough that on one of these episodes that usually you say, unlike some podcasts, when are you going to spill the beans? When are you going to go like, you know what? I've had a few in me and I'm naming names. I'm Brad. I'm coming for all of y'all.
Oh my God. We may have a Princess Bride episode coming up. If someone else wants to host that, I'll totally get tipsy.
Kind of a birthday episode as well, right?
Yeah, we can talk off air, but we'll let you do that. I for reasons we've talked about off air, I'm kind of in between being able to drink alcohol right now, so I'm very happy to let you guys have a few and take the wheel if we need to, but we can talk about that.
We'll figure it out. But hopefully that the other podcasts that I've stopped listening to because they spoil every fucking thing won't come for us and snatch our wigs if we spill those beans. Anyway, we got so much to talk about. We're jumping in right now, and we're going to start with Baby Girl. All right, Jim, kick this one off for us, if you don't mind. Super brief summary, and then we'll give us some thoughts.
I just realized I'm going to be dropping in 5 trailers into this episode. That ought to be good.
Oh, fuck, that's a lot. You know what? You don't have to.
I will.
Be what it is.
No, I can do that. 5 is manageable. When we get to our top 10s, of course, I don't do 30 trailers. But
think of it like a preview to that episode, Jim.
Yeah,
it's a warm up. You're in the batter's box.
You're practicing.
It'll remain to be seen if any of these movies that we talk, any of these 5 movies make it onto our top 10 of the year or in our mentions or whatever. We'll have to see how that works out. But I just realized that 3 of these 5 movies we're going to talk about can be considered Christmas movies. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's, apropos. Hey, real quick, Jim, before you get started, we name dropped Sammy earlier, a few minutes ago, and looks like he's in the live chat with us. He says, hi, y'all.
Hey, Sammy. Sam. Yeah, your ears must have been
glad
burning.
you could join us.
Sam, I don't know if you caught it. We're talking about you reaching out with your excitement about our top 10 of 2024. Can't wait to hear your list too. So please send that our way.
Yeah, we've got his list actually. Well, I do. I don't know if you guys do, but I do. I've seen his list. I will share it with you guys after the show.
All right. I'm not going to spoil myself.
Get on the social medias. No. It's a great list as always. So that'll be good talking about when we get to our top 10s. But yeah, we're into Baby Girl right now. That's what we're supposed to be talking about. So yeah, Baby Girl is a new film starring Nicole Kidman and Harris Dixon and Antonio Banderas, written and directed by Helena Rain, I think is how you pronounce her name. Um, they directed and wrote Bodies, 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 I believe, which is a film, well, I know that you really liked in the year that that came out. Um, I wasn't as high on it as you are, but I gotta say, Baby Girl, I liked a lot more. Um, Baby Girl is where uh, a high powered CEO, Nicole Kidman, puts her career and her family on the line when she begins a torrid and kinky affair with her much younger intern, played by Harris Dixon. Yeah, this film is really interesting. Uh, we've been talking about it a lot. Brad and I, when we saw it, we had a really good discussion about the film, about some of the elements of the film, especially as this movie really dives into kind of the power dynamics at play in a dom sub kind of kink relationship. That's what I will say, and I don't think that really spoils anything. That's all in the trailer. Um, I won't get into too many specifics, but uh, Brad, I know you're going to talk a lot about it. What you think it got right, and I think we were like, I don't know, we were like 30 minutes into the movie, and Brad leans over and whispers to me, he says, I think this movie is kind of getting it right, which kind of excited me. And so, yeah, I like to see the directions that this went in. I love to see this power dynamic at play. Uh, I am not the most knowledgeable about Dom sub boundaries and rules and things that make those relationships tick really strong, but this movie puts it on the screen. Um, I think it plays great to an audience that knows that, but it also can play to an audience that doesn't know anything about that, and it may come off totally different to those two groups of moviegoers. But yeah, I would recommend this one to anybody who has a curiosity about kink and dom sub relationship, as well as just some damn good acting from all three of the folks in this film. I like the way the relationship played out. Um, Not a perfect movie, but I think it's a really good movie that I think deserves to be seen. Do you need to run out and see it in theaters? Probably not. This movie would play fine when it's released on VOD or streaming or rent. But yeah, Baby Girl is a really good watch.
Jim, I'm going to disagree with you about running out to see this in theaters, and here's why. There's so much Antonio Banderas hairy chest goodness. Seeing it on a giant screen, totally worth it. If that's your thing, do it. It's my thing, and I particularly enjoyed that. But yeah, Jim, to your point, I know I'm surprised to any coworkers or family who are listening. I'm a kinkster, and I have a boy and I have a pup, and I love those dynamics a lot for a lot of different reasons that we could probably, I don't know, fill a whole show about. But when 50 Shades of Grey came out a number of years ago, I was mortified watching that movie because, Jim, to your point, there's a lot that I think those films get wrong about BDSM, including consent. Like, fuck, they are terrible around concepts of consent. And so it was really refreshing seeing this film. Going in, I'm like, I don't know. The trailer looks like it could be interesting, but like, are they going to do it again? And like, are all the people that see this movie going to get like wrong ideas? And I actually really appreciated how this film treated concepts of consent, consensual non-consent, power exchange. Really weird to see Nicole Kidman, as a super powered like CEO, kind of in the submissive role. But I do think there's a ton that they got right here, which felt really affirming and validating. I also think there are some weird things with like monogamy versus non-monogamy and kind of viewing things through like a hetero lens that's a little problematic in a couple places. It's not a perfect movie, but it is, I don't know, 50,000 more shades of right than 50 shades of gray. So for all you folks out there who are going to save this for a Valentine's Day watch, A, great idea. And B, I hope that you enjoy it. I hope it evokes some really good questions and that you do some research if you're kind of interested in this stuff. Don't believe everything you see in porn. It's a lot more nuanced than that. But some really great things here. And fuck, Nicole Kidman totally knocked it out of the park here. She was amazing. So this is a big recommend for me. How about you, Will?
I like this movie. I wanted to love it. I did not love it, but I did like it a lot. What I enjoyed so much about it are some of the things that you mentioned. This is a movie that strays away from a lot of what we've seen in films. Already the subject matter is interesting. The way that it's framed is intriguing, and the performances are solid. You mentioned Nicole Kidman. I really want to call attention to Harris Dickinson. This dude has had first of all, he smolders in this movie. Like, this dude is, I don't know. For someone who some of his affectations are just sort of standing around looking disinterested at times, he does that in one of the most smoldering, sexy, hot ways that I've ever seen on screen. And this is a guy whose first film was in Beach Rats back in 2017, then into Triangle of Sadness just 2-3 years ago. He doesn't have a storied career, but I think he's got a hell of one to pull this performance opposite Nicole Kidman. The part that I think really fizzled a little bit for me is I think this movie has sort of a bridging the second to third act kind of problem, in that, like, I think it sets up what it's doing fairly well. I think it lands the plane fairly well, but I think there's just sort of some time in between where it just sort of waffles a bit. It's not my favorite, like, kink movie. I think The Duke of Burgundy and Dogs Don't Wear Pants are still the most interesting I've ever seen in terms of, like, how they portray, not necessarily accurately, but just the way that they explore the idea of power dynamics on screen. But I do think that this one is, like you mentioned, leaps and bounds above 50 Shades of Grey. And again, the performances and the subject matter and just the way everything's pulled together, I think, are pretty good. So this isn't a rush out and see it in theater for me. But this is one that you mentioned, Valentine's Day coming up. This would probably be a good one if you and your partner are looking to have a little bit of a different Valentine's Day evening. Bust these out, as well as the the love dice that you roll them, and it has like a different action and a different body part or whatever it is. If you want to have a spicy evening, I think this would be a good one, as long as the conversation about consent and exploration play is a part of that, because I think that's one of the things the movie really hammers at. But yeah,
tickle my armpit with a feather. That's what the dice says.
That's what it says.
Let me roll my dice.
Yeah, that's what you got to do.
Okay. The first die says hug. All right. Second die, nose. It's not very sexy.
My nose.
Well, I just got
hug my nose with your testicles. That's pretty sexy.
Okay, I just rolled my dice and I got a 14 on my D20 and a 6 on my D6. It's not the same thing, is it?
Oh, let's look at the percentile table. Hold on. I'm going into the Dungeon Masters.
The Dungeon Masters guy? Yeah.
I'm looking at the percentile table. What was the percentile, Will?
Oh, hold on. I literally have percentile dice right next to me.
Yeah,
95.
give me a D100. 95.
95.
Okay, look at the look at. You are flogging a pig.
Flogging a pig? Wink,
yeah.
wink. All right. But yeah, that's the type of fun that you can have with this movie, and other types of fun too. So yeah, it's a recommend for me. I know I mentioned some things I wasn't as big a fan of, but overall, this is a recommend for me.
It in the back of my mind, I'm like, ooh, how much more fun would it have been for people like me and people like Brad, maybe you too, Will, if Antonio Banderas had played, the role, if the two male leads switched roles, maybe it would have been good. But then I'm thinking, I did kind of like, it was an interesting dynamic between the young and the old here, how it was the young intern that you would normally think is inexperienced. He's the one carrying all the relationship experience to this woman, who's like a high-powered CEO. So they did the role reversal there, which I thought was a pretty cool twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of, for me, one of the coolest things about kink. And I know we have other movies we want to get to, but, people come to kink at different parts of their lives, right? Some people discover it when they're 19 and, in a few years of research and attending things, they become pretty experienced. Some people come to it in their 60s or 70s. Wherever you are when you find kink, that's a great place to be. But I agree with you, Jim. I do think it's cool. You would normally think like, ooh, high powered, CEO in her late 50s. She's the one that's going to be
She's
the
a
dominant.
boss, right? Yeah.
She's the boss. No, like if you're the fucking boss, sometimes you want to give that power up and just enjoy being in a subservient role, right?
Mhm.
So that was
Mhm.
really cool to see.
Yeah. I will say that was the only kind of like iffy part in terms of like, what they got right and what they got wrong in terms of like actual consent and power dynamics and, kind of that
Mm,
stuff is at the end of the day, she's his employer. And so there's a power
right.
dynamic there as well that I think is very inappropriate that needs to be flagged. That needs to be flagged and discussed. We don't necessarily need, let me rephrase, flagged. We don't necessarily need to go down the like rabbit hole and like
Yeah.
deep discuss it. But I just wanted to
Yeah.
like note that.
That's a discussion we definitely could have, because I think
Yeah.
the movie did what it could to kind of, like I said, flip that power dynamic a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when it comes to kink, but just also like sex in general, two main rules: don't shit where you eat, right?
Yep.
Keep that separate from your work and your family life. And then the other thing is, don't fucking cheat on your spouse.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be able to enjoy these things, have that discussion with your spouse. Maybe they want to participate. Maybe they don't, but they're okay with you doing it with other people, right? Have the conversation. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to come off like in judgment of cheaters. I'm just saying
No,
I'm advocating having the discussion.
well, that's what this movie does is it's like it's creating a discussion point for kind of like the good and bad things that are involved in kind of power play. And those are my favorite types of like films like that. When I mentioned Duke of Burgundy and Dogs Don't Wear Pants, that's something I like about those films as well. They spark the discussion in a way that something like 50 Shades of Grey really I think doesn't, or at least doesn't to the same degree. But I digress.
Well, bang on. Absolutely right. Bang. Anyway, Jim, Will, we got more movies to get to. Are we ready to transition to the next one?
Yeah.
Take it away.
Next on our list is Nosferatu. All right, we'll briefly set this one up for us, and then we can jump in with some thoughts. What the fuck is Nosferatu?
All right, Nosferatu. This is a reimagining of the 1920s-ish movie, kind of classic Nosferatu film, which itself was sort of a bootleg adaptation of Dracula before Dracula was made, and there was some legal stuff that happened way back then, even involving that film. This adaptation is directed by Robert Eggers, the same guy that gave us The Witch and The Northman. And it's a gothic story about this vampire who has his fangs in, literally and metaphorically, into the dreams and lustful imagination of a young woman. And during this infatuation, he finds himself drawn to her and leaving terror in his wake. I really like this one. This was a fun movie. Maybe fun's not the right word. This is a bleak, dark movie. It's as beautiful as it is revolting, and I think there's something kind of cool about that. I think Lily Rose Depp does a solid job in this, which is nice to say because I haven't loved her in a lot of the stuff that she's played in before. Nicholas Hoult is great in this. Bill Skarsgård is great in this. But really, the star of this film is director Robert Eggers. I think that he, more so than probably anyone working right now, knows how to capture atmosphere. and really bring that atmosphere to screen. I will tell you, there are this is one of my favorite movies of the year, but there are a couple of movies moments in it that slog just a hair. And because of that, when we talk top 10 list at the end of the year, this one's not going to make my list, but it's probably in that honorable mention range. It's really good, but it is a bleak, dark, atmospheric slow burn of a film, so you've got to be in the mood for exactly that type of thing. But if that's your flavor, then this is a hell yeah recommend for me.
Yeah, well, let's see. I love Robert Eggers as one of the best working directors today, ever since The Witch, which is still one of my favorite movies, probably of the last, 10, 15 years. Horror movies. The movie fucking terrified me in a way that not a lot of horror movies can, including this one, unfortunately. I know this movie drips with style, and technically, I think it's wonderful. Everything that's on the screen is done to support this kind of gothic, dreadful style. There's a plague going on, and there are some kind of metaphors that are set up between the vampire and the plague. That's affecting this place where everybody lives. I don't know if it's England or is it London? I think it's London. I'm not sure. And I liked that part of it. I wish they had explored that a little bit more. Rats are running around everywhere. People are dying from all kinds of terrible diseases and the plague. I just didn't feel the terror that I kind of expected going into this movie, and that's maybe my fault for over expecting. I felt a little bit of the dread. It's one of those movies where you kind of know, what's coming, and you really can't do anything about it. It's going to come over you, and by the end, it kind of does. Sammy says it's Germany. Why did I think it was?
Well,
London?
they're they're
weird.
speaking in British accent, but yeah, it's Germany, kind of like in that 1830s ish range.
Yeah. But yeah, I like this film good enough. Certainly not in the top of the 5 or 6 Eggers films we got, including The Lighthouse, as you mentioned, and Will and The Northman. But I think this material is kind of tough for today's audiences. Kind of making this vampire stalkery thing as terrifying as I think he should be. But still, I appreciated the film. I think it's worth watching. Certainly for horror fans, it's going to be a touchstone for this year in horror for most people. But yeah, I liked it. I wish I had loved it more.
Yeah, Jim, I actually have a really fun connection for you that I don't think we thought of a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you remember, but we watched The Witch with Brian and Ron at the cabin we stayed at over the holidays.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. In fact,
Yes.
I remember when we
Yeah, that
watched
was
The
years
Witch
ago.
with them. I know. But I remember when we watched The Witch with them, it obviously was nighttime. And Will, for context and for everyone else, this cabin backs right up on the woods. I mean, you open the back door, walk down a little stone path, you are fucking lost in the woods. So I remember Brian just
like in The
and
Witch.
I remember Brian just going out the back door in the middle of the night, and he's like, "Come with me." I'm like, "Okay." And he wanted to make out. And I'm like, I literally, as hot as you are, Brian, I literally cannot make out with you here right now because I'm freaked the fuck out. I'm going back inside. Anyway, we got to see Nosferatu.
But don't you want to live deliciously?
We got to see Nosferatu, another Eggers film, and just as atmospheric, just as fucking creepy, doubling down on some of that. But I think I agree with y'all in some ways. Some brilliance here. I mean, the atmosphericness, is that a word? I don't know. I'm making it a word. It's really fucking good. But I feel like it was kind of convoluted for me, at least in a couple places. I don't think I totally understood like the rules of vampires in this world and how certain things worked and what was happening like with the girl. And I still don't know that I totally understand it all, but I think they did a pretty great job of just making this freak you the fuck out in a few different places. So I don't think this is, looking at some of the past films like The Northman, Lighthouse, The Witch, I don't feel like it's kind of at that same level for me, but it was still an enjoyable watch. I still appreciate it for what it did. Also, for some reason, and I don't know why, I thought this was going to be a black and white movie from the trailer. Maybe it was just color desaturated or something.
Oh yeah.
So like 5 minutes into the movie, I'm like, everything's in color. This is what's going on. And I don't know where I got that idea from, but I was really glad it was actually in color.
Yeah.
Where usually it's the other way around, right? People expect a color movie and then they get a black. What the fuck? This
Right?
is in black and white.
Talk about a role
damn it.
reversal.
The thing that I think is interesting about this movie is it reminds me a lot, not because of the subject matter, but because I think of the expectation management that comes with it, of a film from Guillermo del Toro from a few years ago called Crimson Peak. And the reason I say that is that movie was classified sort of deeply as a horror, but it was really a gothic romance, and specifically sort of about that, kind of like that oppressive, it sits on you like 3 levels of blankets on top of you, just sort of like bleakness and darkness kind of funneled through that particular narrative. And I think that's what we get here too. Like the horror elements are definitely there, but I think as much as anything, this is like a gothic take on like a fairy tale, a fantasy tale, with and I think that's the hard part about marketing a movie like this, because you want to put on the tin like, oh, there's a vampire and scary stuff happens, therefore must be horror. But horror itself has such a wide range that it's really hard, I think, for general audiences to sort of understand exactly like what angle this specific film might hit. So like,
Sure.
I think if you're just looking for like a straight up horror, this probably isn't going to have those things for you. But if you kind of want kind of the atmosphere of horror, like you mentioned, Brad, just sort of like I think that's where you get it.
Yeah, and this is, Will, I agree. I think this definitely plays more like, I mean, it is kind of a gothic romance when you get to it, right? She's infatuated with someone who's not her husband, who is, in her dreams and coming to her in her dreams and seducing her, right? So it is a very dark gothic romance in a way, with elements of horror with it. Look, I love Willem Dafoe, but I just think in this movie, every time he was in it, it took me out a little bit. I don't think I like the character. Nothing to do with Willem as an actor. I just felt that his character didn't quite fit. He was being really used as an exposition machine within the movie. He has all this scientific knowledge of the supernatural, and here's what's happening and what's wrong with the girl. And those notes didn't really mesh for me with the rest of the atmosphere of the film. So I kind of wish they had tailed that back. Wasn't really
It was
needed,
hard for me having the Green Goblin talk to me about vampires. Like, it just didn't fly.
Willem Dafoe will always have a special place in my heart. And I realize this because he keeps working with directors I like. He was my, you get those you see those like letterbox, like, who your most watched actor, who your most watched director was. And Willem Dafoe ended up being my most watched actor of last year. And yeah, he was in 4 different new release films that I watched in 2024, which is wild.
Sammy says, but the cats, weren't they cute? There were some cats in this film. Always appreciate it when the kitties show up.
Yeah, the only problem, unfortunately, is we've been spoiled on cats from Flo.
Right? Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Hey, I don't want to go
Yeah.
another 25 seconds without acknowledging another comment in the chat. Tom says, "Hello, boys." This was a few minutes ago, but hey, Tom,
Hey,
welcome.
Hey,
Tom.
Tom. Always a pleasure when Tom can join
Indeed,
us.
you could say I'm glad when he joins us. So,
Glad. Yeah. Happy too.
all right, we got more movies. You guys ready to move on to our next one?
That
Yeah.
would not
All right.
suck. Ah,
I love it. All right. Up next, we are talking about Carry On. Jim, this movie has nothing to do with my wayward son. But if you don't mind, set up Carry On. That was a terrible joke. I'm so sorry. What is Carry On? And what were your initial thoughts on this new Christmas slash holiday question mark movie?
Yeah. Carry On is a new action thriller drama, crime drama, whatever movie that stars Taron Egerton, I think. Or is it Edgerton? Did
Edgerton, I
we had
believe.
this discussion?
We looked
Is
at
it
we looked it
Edgerton?
up at the
Okay.
cabin. It is indeed we watched an interview where he says it's Edgerton. So that's what I'm going with.
Okay, Taron Egerton, who I like, Jason Bateman, who I also like, and Sophia Carson, who I'm kind of introduced to in this movie a little bit. But it's about a mysterious traveler that blackmails a young TSA agent who working at the airport, security line, into letting a dangerous package slip through security and onto a Christmas Eve flight. Again, another Christmas movie. This movie went direct to Netflix, I think. I don't think it had any theatrical release. Um, and look, this is exactly the kind of movie that we needed when we were on vacation. We had a group of people in the cabin. We're like, what are we going to watch? Um, One of our friends isn't a TSA agent, but he works at some kind of, I'll just say, law enforcement role. And we're like, we got to watch this with him because I heard this movie has some kind of ridiculous plot points. As some of these thrillers do. It's one of these thrillers that you expect to see. What's his name? The other Jason, um, uh, the muscle
Statham?
guy. What's his name? Yeah,
Statham?
Jason
Yeah.
Statham, Jason Statham, or another. Trying to think of another actor, but anyway, uh, just a crazy plot. I don't want to give away too much, but you can imagine what happens here. It all takes place in an airport and on airplanes. Hijinks ensue. It gets tense. The FBI is brought in. Crazy shit happens. This is a perfect popcorn movie to watch on Netflix with friends to like just just have a great time. Just watch it and like not because it's great cinema, but because stuff happens on the screen that you're like, oh my god, I can't believe that happened. Why is this person doing that? Um, and it was I had a lot of fun with this movie. I'm not going to call it a great movie. You'll never see it on my list of best movies of the year, but I did have fun with it.
Yeah, Jim, you talked about like watching this up at the cabin and like let me set the scene for you, Will, and everybody else. We've got a cozy fire burning. We're all in union suits and long underwear and robes. I was wearing my old Dickensian era, like Scrooge McDuck Christmas Carol hat, with a candle holder. We're in this rosy cabin setting, and we're watching Taron Egerton, like in a movie that probably should have starred Nick Cage back in the 90s, but we're somehow getting in 2024. This was kind of a crazy ride, and it was fun to watch this with a group. Some of the things that were happening, we were just rolling our eyes and just howling so hard. It was crazy. But it was kind of fun to, to think about all the shit that TSA probably protects us from on a daily basis that we have no idea about. And if we did, we'd probably never fucking air travel again. I'm kind of curious. Like, I don't know if we have ever talked to our TSA agent friend about this shit, but part of me really wants to know the craziest stuff they've ever found, and part of me really fucking doesn't want to know. I'm sure it's not on the level of the stuff that happened in this film, and again, we want to be careful not to give spoilers, but I can only imagine some of the stuff they must see. Fucking dildos and who knows what appears. Hopefully not any kind of weapon of mass destruction, but I'm sure it's crazy for them.
Yeah, so this one is, and I'm about to damn this film with like faint praise overall, but like this is an incredibly competent movie, and that doesn't always sound like a compliment, but it is here. This movie feels like, you mentioned sort of like a 90s throwback. This reminds me so much of like the Die Hard franchise. One, because of the holiday thing, and two, because of the, man versus a terrorist, and like the kind of the action and the intrigue and kind of the planning that has to go in between all those set pieces. I don't think this one didn't blow me away. It didn't knock me off my feet. Like, it's not a film that I think is going to kind of light the world on fire, change anything. But when I say it's competent, I think there have been a lot of these sort of like action movies of this ilk that have come out in the years since sort of like that 90s boom. And I think a lot of them have been, in my eyes, sort of like trashily done. And this one is not. This is an incredibly watchable film. I think, so this one landed on Netflix. That's actually a great place for it, because this is the type of movie, and again, damning with faint praise, but I do mean this, like, I think would be a great watch while like putting away laundry or doing some ironing, so that you can watch the movie, not like in and out of the room, pay attention, put down your phone. But at the same time, like, you can, when you have the thing on, you can sort of like, oh, check that out. Okay, I'm going to iron this. Oh, wow, check that out. It feels like a good place for that. So yeah, this one is right down the middle for me. I would not say, if this was a movie in cinemas, I would not recommend it. But it's on Netflix, and I feel like that's an appropriate place for it, for streaming. I think Taron Egerton is fine in it. I think that, he does, I don't know that he necessarily has like, he does a fine enough job. I think he is the weak part of this film, which is a shame, because I do like him quite a bit, but I don't know that he fit this role quite as well as maybe some of those 90s stars did in the past. But whatever. It's very watchable, and I think it's worth watching.
I just know that for me, I found myself thinking, like, here I am watching Taron Egerton in this movie, when just a few years ago I was seeing him very brilliantly in Rocket Man, and I'm like, how is this the same actor in these two very different movies?
At least, like,
this is more along the lines of that. Well, I'm sorry, Will, go ahead.
I was going to say, at least people are watching this movie, in that, like, every so often one of these Netflix movies drops where, like, and I forget the name of it. I think like Red Notice or something like that. The one with Ryan Reynolds and The Rock, I think. And it was like setting all of these records, but like, I could never find a single soul that watched that damn movie. At least this one, I'm seeing people, I saw a lot of people posting about it on social media. So anecdotally, I saw a lot of people saying just like, hey, I watched this movie called Carry On, and I had a good time watching it. So I think that's something.
Yeah, it was exactly like the Kingsman movies that Taron Egerton is in, except he's put behind a luggage screener and doesn't have all the gadgets. You know what I mean? Like, he's trying to prevent mass destruction just by being a good guy and doing the right things, and stuff spins out of control. And Jason Bateman is fun here. I mean, you could tell he's having fun with this role. It's kind of perfect for him. Have we seen him play like the bad guy in another movie before?
I don't think I have. And I actually really enjoyed him in the villain role here. Like going in, I was like,
Yeah.
Jason Bateman, Teen Wolf 2, he's the villain, really? But
Yeah.
he was really good.
Right. I agree.
Right. Anything else to say on Carry On before we move forward?
No, this has been a good conversation. I think we should carry on.
All right. Well, pack your bags because we're moving forward. If Jim, you're on board, you ready to go? Cool.
Yeah. Go.
Let's do it. On to our fourth film of the episode, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. All right, Will, being of the Sonic generation, as I myself am, I love that you're setting this one up, and I don't know anything about what you thought about this one, so cannot wait to hear what you have to say. Go for it, friend, if you don't mind.
All right, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, based off of the popular character from the Sega Genesis game. You know, Sega does what Nintendo don't, if you remember that from the 90s. This is the third of the sort of CGI films that star Ben Schwartz as Sonic, Jim Carrey as Robotnik, and Cyclops himself, James Marsden, as Sonic's human friend. Tom. Yeah, Tom. So this one stars Sonic the Hedgehog, Knuckles the Echidna, and Tails the Fox. They come together to fight Shadow the Hedgehog, who's this mysterious counterpart to Sonic, who is just absolutely like a force to be reckoned with. So now Team Sonic is working with Dr. Robotnik to sort of figure out a way to put this menace to bed. These movies are, I think, they're perfectly fine at what they do, and I do want to say I think these movies are better than they have any right to be. I think this is my favorite of the three. I'm also putting this probably at the bottom of the list of the 5 movies that we're talking about tonight. So when I say that it's my favorite of the 3, and I ultimately say I had a good time with it, I am also, want to temper those expectations. But I think what this movie does well is the other movies had just enough of Jim Carrey in them doing kind of wacky, weird Jim Carrey things that it kind of got on my nerves a little bit. This one has more of him, but because it has more of him, it almost feels less uncomfortable seeing him do a shtick because it's more like built into the DNA of the film as opposed to like being like weird, like kind of almost like cut scenes of just Jim Carrey doing Jim Carrey things. Trust me, it's still Jim Carrey doing Jim Carrey things, but it feels like it belongs here a little bit more. The characters are fine. They're fun. The action in some cases looks pretty darn good for what it is. This is a very, very, very soft recommend. I think if you have kids, absolutely this is a high recommend. A lot of the families that were in the theater when I saw this seemed to be having a pretty good time. I had a pretty good time with it overall too. But again, you have to be on board with exactly what the movie's going to do, or you're going to get out of sync with it. So, do you rush out to see it in theaters? If the first 2 movies really like tripped your trigger, sure. If your kids are into this type of movie, sure. Otherwise, I think this is perfectly fine streaming.
Thanks, Will.
Well, I think I'm right there with you. Sorry, I'm having audio delay and I can't tell when people are picking up. So I'll just keep going, I guess. Sorry to talk if I'm talking over people. I think, Will, you mentioned there's more Jim Carrey here, twice as much, 2 times the Jim Carrey. And I think I got the impression watching this movie that, they kind of gave Jim Carrey a bit of a loose leash here, in kind of ad-libbing and hamming it up as Robotnik. And for me, it didn't quite work. I guess if you're a kid, it probably would work. And I'm neither a kid nor am I a Sonic game devotee, like from the '90s or whatever. But so I guess, well, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think this movie is for me, but I still kind of enjoyed it. I mean, it was a fun little ride. For what it is, I think it's fine. I don't think it's terrible. I think I could have done with a lot less. Uh, not twice as much Jim Carrey as the previous movies. But I think if you had taken the same amount of Jim Carrey you got like in the second movie, put it in this movie, I think it would have been probably the best of the three for me. But yeah, just it was a fun thing to do on a holiday break, but otherwise, just not really ring my bell
Ring.
or
Sonic.
collect
I
my
like that you
rings
did
or
that.
whatever it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Will, you mentioned being of like, that generation where like Sega Genesis was an up and coming thing, and Sonic was a big huge like launch title for that. And I remember like getting a Sega Genesis that year. I was very, very blessed. My mom busted her fucking ass to make that happen. Mom, I love you. Thank you. And that was probably one of the best Christmas mornings ever. Just hearing the of like Sonic like revving up, and then ding, 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 like as he's collecting rings. Yes. So for me, I hold Sonic very near and dear to my heart. The first couple of Sonic movies, I don't know, they were fine. They didn't really light my world on fire or anything, as we sometimes say. But it was neat to get Sonic, on the big screen, and they incorporated some of those little sound effects and ring noises, and it was cool. But with the third movie, it went into game lore that was past the games that I played when I got my Sega Genesis. So I played the first couple of Sonics. Tails came into the picture. We got Knuckles, but then like I guess I don't know. I fell out of Sonic, right? And so I didn't really know who Shadow was. They set Shadow up at the end of the second one in the Stinger, I think. And I'm like, well, it's Keanu Reeves playing a hedgehog. What could go wrong? And actually, he did a really good job as Shadow. And I actually found the Shadow character really compelling, probably more compelling
Yeah.
than Sonic himself. And
Yeah.
I want more Shadow. I don't know if that'll ever be a thing or if that could somehow happen or what, but I really like that character a lot, and I also really like the interplay between Sonic and Shadow. So, without going into spoilers or anything, I think that Keanu Reeves kind of brought a bit of a grounding presence that counteracted some of the like Jim Carrey squaredness, and so I appreciated that a lot. That said, it was still way too much Jim Carrey antics for me. I really wish I could erase like 40 minutes of some of that stuff. I feel like it just ate up a lot of screen time and made the movie spin its wheels, when we should have been like spinning rings. And, we could have got a more concise adventure that was still just as fun. But again, Jim, to your really good point, that's where I was revving up with all this. This movie is primarily for kids. Yes, it's also aimed at adults like Will and myself who played Sonic, or Jim, maybe you, if your child ever played Sonic, maybe you've heard the sound effects or seen it. But it's mostly for the kids. And when we saw this movie up in Pine Top, there were several kids in attendance. Oh my God, Jordy's little ears. It's so adorable. I
Mm-hmm.
can see them on camera. Um, Seeing those kids just like laugh from the beginning of that movie to the end with the Jim Carrey stuff, it softened my heart a little about it. I'm like, yeah, kind of bugs the shit out of me, but you know what? It's for them. They're enjoying it. I get why they put all that in there. So I'm really glad the kids enjoy it. It's really primarily for them. But if somebody out there wants to make a fan cut of these films and just remove as much Jim
Or tone
Carrey
it
as you can,
down. Yeah.
or tone it down by about 50%, I would watch them again. I'll leave it there.
I totally agree with you on the Shadow character. I thought it was really well done. I wish actually they had leaned into that character a little bit more because I thought he had kind of a cool setup, a cool backstory. And he was a character that you actually kind of connect. At least look at me talking about me connecting with a fucking video game character in a movie, right? I connected with that character more than any other character in the film. So good on them. And you're right. I hope if they're continuing these movies, which if since it was monetarily successful, I'm sure they will. I hope they continue and make keep the shadow character compelling in a way.
I agree with Shadow being sort of like the highlight of this. The other highlight, I think, was some of the action sequences were very well, choreographed. Because you're dealing with a character that, by design's got to go fast. But they still make it to where you get both that feeling of speed while also getting the feeling of knowing what's going on. It was one of the problems I kind of had with like the Quicksilver character in the Days of Future Past sort of movies, is that the only way they could really show the speed was to slow everything to super slow motion. But here you got Sonic going fast, you got Sonic going a normal speed, while other things you got to see it from a bunch of different temporal perspectives, I would say. But it was always easy to figure out what was going on. So I loved the animation choreography in this. It worked really well for me.
Agreed.
Yep.
Well, we've got one. We're battling through some audio delays. We've got one more movie to talk about, and then we're gonna land this plane. And Jim, we probably need to reset our internet connection because it has been trash tonight.
It has, I'm sorry about that.
Cox is usually a thing we love in this house, but right now, very much not so much. Anyway, we've got one more film. We're going to go ahead and make that transition. And I hate saying the name of this movie, but whatever. We're going to talk about My Old Ass. Oh, Jim, what can you tell us about My Old Ass? And well, I'm groaning.
I'm glad you picked the oldest member of this podcast to introduce My Old Ass. That's very interesting. I don't know how that worked out, but I probably should never have agreed to that. But here we go. So My Old Ass is a coming of age comedy drama, dramedy, I guess, where a mushroom trip brings free-spirited Elliot face-to-face with her 39-year-old self, kind of from the future. But when Elliot's quote-unquote old ass delivers warnings to her younger self, Elliot realizes she has to rethink everything about her family, life, and love. So this is an interesting premise for a coming-of-age movie. I can't say it's never been done before, because it probably has, where a character's, an older version of a character comes back to present themselves to their younger version, and kind of they have interesting conversations like, what's the future like? And, what am I like in the future? What happens here? And what was interesting about this movie is, first of all, Maisie Stella is the star of this film. She plays Elliot, and she's great. As a newcomer, I think she's fantastic. Someone to probably keep an eye on. She's like 15 years old here, and I think she does an amazing job. You know me, I don't really like a lot of, childhood actors can be touch and go with me, or child actors. But as a child actor, this Maisie Stella seems to have the chops, and we should keep an eye on her. But opposite her, in the old ass role, is Aubrey Plaza, who I love also. She's great in here. I don't want to talk too much about this movie. I would have loved to see more Aubrey Plaza in this film. We could talk about that, because she's amazing, and her character is so funny and quirky, but also kind of renders some advice to Elliot, which is really emotionally affecting throughout this film, and certainly by the end is what I'll say. I really like this movie. It's a shame that it has kind of a weird name, and I don't know how you market a movie called My Old Ass to anybody. So it's probably not going to get the audience that it deserves in theaters, because I think old people and young people, older people, parents, grandparents, um, and younger kids, teens especially, would really like this film, and I hope they connect with it when it arrives on streaming or VOD platform. Because I think this film is really worth a watch. If you get to see this, either waiting for streaming or if it's still playing in your area, don't let the title chase you away. My Old Ass is the goods. You hear that, boys?
Yeah.
We hear you.
My Old Ass
was
is the goods. I'm just saying.
I was letting it marinate because I'm like, A, it's not an old ass, but B, your ass very much is the goods. I've known that for 15 plus years, and I hope to know it for many more.
You're
Wait.
so sweet.
You were letting Jim's old ass marinate?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't.
Marinated ass.
I mean,
that doesn't sound so good.
I thought
does it?
that the kink conversation was earlier in the episode.
Not marinate and marinara sauce. That would be weird. But, you know, like
Marinate,
seminal
yeah.
fluids and lube. Like
In the hot tub. Marinate in the hot tub. Yeah, come marinate
Sure.
with me.
Bear soup. I agree with almost everything you said there, Jim. I really like this movie as well. This is a very sweet, but also devastating in some ways, coming of age story, right? About a subject matter that, like, you're right, we've seen this before. But I think it's always compelling, like, what if I could talk to a previous version of myself? What if I could give myself some advice that would have been helpful in the moment, but I can't know in real time because none of us has that crystal ball. What's compelling about this one is not necessarily what it's saying, but I think the way that it's saying it, because this is a very lo-fi movie. There's no like sci-fi special effects or like really doing a lot of explaining too much of what's happening here. There's maybe a line here, a line there that sort of like justifies things, but really this is all about, they hand wave right past that and get to okay, I'm having a conversation with myself. And that's the important thing. I do wish there was more Aubrey Plaza because I think she is just absolutely stellar in this role. And I think she does bring a lot to it. I do think, that's no slagging off the lead here because I do think she is very good and she does carry all those scenes without Aubrey Plaza very, very well. I think this is a very, very good film. Again, it's not going to light anybody's world on fire, but I think you're going to walk away from it with a feeling or two. And that could be different for everyone. It might be a nostalgic feeling. It might be a hopeful feeling. It might be a bittersweet feeling. There's a lot of ways that we interpret the way that we see our past and the way we think about our future and kind of all of the gaps that are in between that coincide with us as we are now as the vertex. Everyone's going to have a different way of thinking about those different things because of those experiences that we've had. So I can't tell you what your experience is going to be. I can tell you what mine is. And it was just really thinking back about, I don't have any of those, I regret that I did this or I regret that I did that. There's things that I've had in my life that have ended in heartbreak or have ended in, things not going the way I wanted them to, has ended in tears, but they were all such formative moments for me that I found myself thinking at the end, I'm glad I experienced those things as they were. And I think that was a compelling way of making me sort of re-examine my own life. Again, when movies let us do that, I think that's there's a magic to that. So I recommend this one. Again, this one's no longer in theaters. It was here in Austin for I think 3 or 4 weeks. It was in theaters for a long time here. But
it should pop out on VOD anytime soon.
Oh, it is now because this one went almost straight to VOD because this was an Amazon property. Amazon acquired it for $15 million, put it up. It ran a quick $5 million out of box office, which I think is great for what they acquired. And then it became a centerpiece on their streaming platform on Amazon Prime.
Cool.
pretty quickly thereafter. So yeah, you can find this right now on Amazon, and that's a great place for it. You can go watch it right now, and you should. It's pretty good.
That's always a good thing for sure. Sam in the chat says, great movie, and it made me appreciate Justin Bieber for the first time ever. I had to mute myself, Sam, because I was laughing really hard at that at first, and then I was like, wait, is that resonating for me too? I think it is. I've never been on the Bieber train, but I was kind of viewing this movie through the lens of like someone growing up like during that time, right? And it makes sense. And I kind of internally resonate. Like we did a lot of camping and like RV camping and cabin camping, like when I was a kid growing up. And this was kind of a cool movie in a nostalgia sense. For me, it wouldn't have been Bieber. It probably would have been like, I don't know, fucking Bonnie Tyler or something. But like, you know, you have like that artist who like sings the songs of your life and your generation or whatever. Will, you mentioned a word that also resonated, bittersweet. That is exactly how I would describe this film. And for me, I do have things about my past decisions that I made or things I didn't do that I wish maybe I had done differently. I would have probably come out a different person as a result of it. But like, I remember during those camping trips, all I wanted to do was like be left alone and read my books. My mom was like, come play euchre with the family. And I'm like, no, I'm reading the newest Star Wars book by Kevin J. Anderson. Sorry. And now, like with mom gone and grandma gone and my aunt gone, I'd fucking give anything to go back and play those euchre games, you know? And so like watching this film, the idea of like your future self being able to not necessarily outright tell you everything about how your life is going to play out based on decisions you will make, but you know, maybe some gentle nudges or like, you know, little tips. I found that kind of interesting, but also a little bit frustrating sometimes too, because like the main character of this film, she's a fucking brat. She annoyed the shit out of me at certain points, and at other points, you know, when her vulnerability started to show, I kind of connected with her and liked her a lot. So I kind of have conflict. Yeah. And I have the same thing with Aubrey Plaza. I love her. Aubrey, not that you're listening, but I'm so sorry about your husband passing. But Aubrey was great here. I just wish we got more from the trailer. It seemed like it was going to be a big Aubrey Plaza. And I swear she was only in this movie for like 7 minutes or something. But what she did with those 7 minutes, with just her facial expressions, with the quivering timbre of her voice, shook me on several different levels. So powerful performance. This is definitely a big recommend for me as well.
Yeah, this movie reminded me of another much older coming of age film, starring Jane Fonda, Henry Fonda, and Katharine Hepburn, called Old on Golden Pond, because the setting and the vibe is very much like on Golden. But this was like on Golden Pond for Gen Z. Like that's what this movie kind of reminded me of a lot. And it's coming of age. You know, the plot isn't the same. This isn't a like. It involves different generations, right? In a family, it's not somebody, you know, tripping out and traveling back in time, but it's it has some similar bones to it, I think, and I love that movie, so I really so this movie really resonated with me, and also it's a great proponent of psychedelic mushroom use.
The film that this one really reminded me of, and this is probably an unfair comparison just because it's also an Aubrey Plaza movie, so it's probably like, I don't know, a little basic, but there's a movie from 2012 called Safety Not Guaranteed, Colin Trevorrow movie. And
yes,
what the reason it reminded me so much of this movie is both of them are in a lot of ways the lowest of lo-fi sci-fi type movies possible, because they explore like a premise that is sci-fi in its base, but they kind of fit in that mumblecore or sort of mumblecore adjacent sort of like family. So yeah, I think, and Aubrey Plaza is slowly becoming the queen of those types of movies. Like I think that any
Mhm.
given year, you can pretty much block out whichever like an indie film that she's in, being a nominee or like a deep candidate or maybe even a winner somewhere at Sundance. Like she's sort of like, I think she has a permanent seat at Sundance at this point, is I guess what I'm saying. And I'm here for it.
For sure.
Hmm.
Jim, you mentioned the proponent for like tripping out on mushrooms or whatever. I'm slowly being more vocal about this because I think it's a fucking amazing thing for depression and anxiety. But I've been experiencing ketamine therapy for the last few months, and it's been pretty amazing. Growing up on a farm in Michigan, I never thought I would turn to psychedelics as like a therapeutic thing. It's all done in a clinic with doctors. It's not like doing it at home. But when you like merge with the universe and like the future, the past, and the present are all commingling, and you're like, just fucking, your brain is a million times bigger than the whole cosmos. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of amazing, and some pretty cool revelations come to you. So obviously there's no such thing, at least that we know, as time travel. But you know what? Like psychedelics is a way of getting more in touch with yourself and learning about yourself and dealing with some things. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Could be a thing.
How'd you feel about like seeing like young teens like just grabbing a bunch of mushrooms and going off in the woods and doing mushrooms? That must have, it's kind of I don't know, it's a little unsettling, right? I don't know. For me it was to see that.
I'd be scared to like do it. I don't know, like in an uncontrolled setting in a group for fun. Like, I mean, it might be cool, but like, what if you're like, I don't know, dancing around and you fall in the fucking fire? Like, hopefully you
Yeah,
have
or
someone who
or
is not
drown in the
affected.
pond, right?
Right. Like, hopefully you have someone who is not affected there to like keep everybody safe.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But that's not what this movie's about, right? Obviously, this is
No,
about
no.
this girl and her coming of age, and Aubrey Plaza as her older self trying to impart some wisdom. And it's an interesting concept because if you could be, you talked about it, Brad, like if you could be your older self and go back and visit your, you know, your kid at the campground or whatever, and you think about what you would tell him. Would you come on strong? Would you just like try to nudge them and have them go, yeah, like, what, fuck you, whatever, grandpa, you know what I mean? I'm going to read my book. You know, it's an interesting concept to see how that would actually go with you and your younger self.
I would say, I know exactly what I'd say. I would say, Bradley, I know your secret about Commander Riker from Star Trek. That's how you know I'm you from the future. Put the fucking book down and go play euchre. And that would do it.
Oh, yeah,
I like
baby.
it.
Little blackmail there. Yeah,
I like it a lot.
that's a power dynamic. That's a power dynamic I didn't even think of. Spoken
There's
like a true dom.
definitely something to the idea of going back in time, and not to yourself like too young, of course, but you know, like yourself like in your 20s or so, and then yourself in your 20s going like, oh, I'd like to see my old ass.
Oh boy.
Can you imagine going back in time and just being able to show like your younger self, just like Growler or W Bear, any of those apps, and just being like, oh my God, this exists at my fingertips? Yeah.
Right?
Be a mind blower.
You're gonna love it.
Have Dick here.
You're gonna love
10 minutes or less, or the pizza's free.
It's like DoorDash. What's DoorDash?
You're gonna love it.
You're
Just don't love it too much. You're gonna love it. Just don't love it too much.
Dick Dash, right? Oh goodness. All right. Well, it has been a crazy fun discussion. I agree. Absolutely. We've been at it for an hour and 15 minutes already. And not that we're super regimented, but whew, talking about 5 movies. This has been a marathon. You guys feeling it at all?
Yeah,
feeling it before the show started, but but it re-energized me a little bit. So that's good.
Yeah, feeling it, but in a good way. You know, like it's always always fun to talk movies with you guys.
Absolutely. I agree, and I'm so looking forward to next week. Again, just a reminder for y'all, we are doing our top 10 films of 2024 next week relative to when we're recording. So that's going to be January 21st at 5:40 p.m. Pacific time. We will be
I am not
live
ready.
streaming on YouTube and Facebook Live. Me either. I'm 90% ready thanks to Letterboxd, but I think I have like 5-star movies, and I got to figure out a rank for them. I'll probably wait till literally the last second. But reminder for everybody, Will, love and adore you so much, friend. Thank you for digging out our spreadsheet from last year. Listeners, feel free to comment on our Facebook page or YouTube. We'll be collecting your top 10 films, or like Jim said, maybe you only have a top 3 or a top 2. That's cool too. Drop those for us. Can't wait to see what your picks are and read some of those on the show. It's another great fucking year, 2025. I'm so looking forward to talking about so many amazing films that are coming out in the upcoming weeks, months, and years. But we still got that little last bit of business from 2024 to get done and dusted. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Please join us for that. In the between times, in case folks want to chat with us ahead of that show, let's let folks know how they can connect. Jim Pugliafico, how can folks get a line to you?
You can find me and my movie reviews and ratings on Letterboxd at JJP Out West. That's my handle on there. Please reach out to me on there, and who knows? Maybe if you check on there sometime before the show, you might get a peek at my top 10 or my top movies of the year. I'll try not to spill the beans, but I can't guarantee that I won't. Also, you can find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
Safety not guaranteed.
That's right. I think that was one of the first
Right,
movies
thanks.
that we saw together at South by Southwest.
I remember watching that here at the house.
Do you?
Maybe we watched it a second time
Back and see.
after South by. I forget.
I don't know.
Or maybe you saw it at South by, and because sometimes we diverge, right? Like you'll go see something, I'll go see something else, and then we'll trade notes. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe I saw it here at the house, but definitely takes me back for sure. Mm-hmm. Will, how can folks connect with you, friend?
All right, there's a couple places you can find me. Look for me on Facebook. My name is William Lindis there. I'm also on Letterboxd at the Movie Bear. Everything's been logged since, some safety not guaranteed. Like there's a lot of lists on there. I'm doing the Criterion Challenge for 2025. My top 2024 list is on there. Although I've seen some things lately that have shattered that list, I think. So I've got to put some hard work into reworking my list before the episode. You can also find me on Blue Sky. Look for at the Movie Bear there as well. Come say hi.
Sounds like some brutal choices may have to be made.
I think that is the appropriate word for it.
All right. Thanks.
I only wish.
Folks, you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one who probably has... We're getting that audio delay. Sorry, folks. You can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one who probably has Chub, Chaser, Bear, Otter, Shark, Wolf, whatever the fuck silly labels in common with you. And find me on Letterboxd at iBradPro. I'm rating every movie I see. Don't necessarily write a review unless it's really special as a really good movie or a really bad movie. If you don't have a written review for me, it means your movie is probably, it's fine. It's okay. Anyway, we will see you all next week. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Have a good one. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.